Alrighty, welcome back, boys and girls. It's your main math man, Rich, and coming to you live from Summit Academy. In this video, we're just practicing on how to solve some of these volumes of a sphere, a cylinder, and a cone. So that's going to be our lesson objective for today, and we're also going to be able to find those different dimensions when we're given the volume. So for that first one, it says and for each of them, it says write the formula, draw the shape, and label the appropriate dimensions. Make sure you can do that for those the first 6 problems. So then it says for number 1, it says a cylinder has a height of 4 centimeters and a radius of 5 centimeters. What is the volume in terms of pi? So remember, when we say in terms of pi, we're going to say we can just leave it be as that symbol. So what we can do first is we can draw this shape. So I'm going to draw a cylinder. So again, there's 2 ovals connected by those side lengths. And again, you can have that dashed line kind of like that, so that way it gives some depth to it. And so again, our radius is going to be from the point in the center to the outside. So our radius for this one is 5, and our height is going to be equal to 4. And so what we can do first, if we're solving for the volume, we can find the area of the base. So again, our area of base is going to be equal to pi times the radius squared. And so that's just going to be equal to pi times 5 squared, which is the same as 25 pi. Now we can find the volume of the cylinder, so we're going to say the volume of the cylinder is going to be equal to the area of the base times the height. So we plug in the values that we have. So we're going to say this is going to be 25 pi for the area of the base times the height, which is 4. So altogether, our volume is going to be equal to 100 pi, and we're going to say centimeters cubed since we're talking about volume. So make sure you have your units to the 3rd power. In number 2, a cylinder has a volume of 108 pi centimeters cubed. If its height is 3, then what is its radius? So we're trying to find we're given the volume for this one, and we're trying to find the radius. So this is what we're looking for, the radius. So what I can do is I can draw my wonderful cylinder on the side here. I have some of those dashed lines. And we're going to say, okay, h equals 3 because that's our height. And we don't know the radius, but we can say r equals our question mark because that's what we're trying to solve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my volume first. So I'm going to say volume equals the area of the base times the height. And what I can say is I can plug in the numbers that I have. So I know what volume is. So I'm going to say that's 108 pi equals, again, what's the area of the base? Well, that's just going to be pi times the radius squared times h, which is times 3. And so what I can do is I can eliminate some of these things. So I can divide both sides by pi, and I can divide both sides by 3. So let me do that first. Let's say divide both sides by 3 pi. Divide both sides by 3 pi, so that way I can eliminate some of these. So that way it will cancel out on the right side. All I'll be left with is just r squared, which is the radius squared, and on the left side I'll have 108 divided by 36. So it's going to be 108 divided by 3, which is going to be 36 equals r squared. So let me actually change that to a different color. And it's going to be 36 equals r squared. So what we have to do to get rid of that exponent is we have to take the square root of both sides. So since I have exponent 2, I can take the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And so I'm just going to say r equals 6, and I'm going to say 6 centimeters. All right, moving to number 3. It says a cone has a height of 6 centimeters and a radius of 7 centimeters. What is its volumes in terms of pi? So I can write it like this. I can say, all right, here's my circular base, cone on the side, comes to a point. And we're going to say, okay, the radius is going to be equal to 7. So r equals 7, and we can say h equals 6. So now, same setup, we're going to find the area of the base. So I'm going to say big B is equal to pi times the radius squared, which is equal to pi times, we're going to say 7 squared. which is equal to 49 times pi. So that's our area of base. And when I say the volume of a cone this time is going to be equal to the area of the base times the height divided by 3. So make sure you're seeing the cone and cylinder difference, because the cone is the cylinder formula divided by 3. So now for this one, we plug in those values. So I'm going to say I have 49 pi times our height, which is 6, divided by 3. And what I can do is I can actually cancel this out, because 6 divided by 3 is the same as times 2. So I'm just going to do 49 pi times 2. So when I say the volume of this cone, it's going to be 98 pi centimeters cubed. Again, we can leave our volume in terms of pi because we don't have to multiply it out. For number 4, it says a cone has a volume of 96 pi centimeters cubed. If its radius is 6, what is the height? So we now have a different cone now. So I'm going to draw my cone out, come to a point, and we're trying to solve for its height. So we don't know what h is, but we're going to say our radius is going to be equal to 6. And so what I can do is I can write out my formula. So I'm going to say the volume of the cone is equal to big B times h over 3. So I'm going to say I'm going to use the volume that it gives. So I have 96 pi equals pi times 6 squared, because that's our radius squared. Again, make sure to remember that this is pi radius squared. And we have times h, which we don't know what that is, so we're just going to leave it be as a variable, all divided by 3. So let's be able to simplify some things here. I can use some inverse operations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides. Let's do a different color here. Let's multiply both sides by 3 to get rid of that denominator. So multiply both sides by 3. So I get rid of that denominator, and I'm going to divide both sides by pi to get rid of pi. So now what I have is this. I'm going to write in white here. So I have 96 times 3 is going to be 288 equals, I'm going to do 6 squared, which is 6 times 6, which is 36, and I have times h. Last step is to divide both sides by the coefficient. So divide both sides by 36 to get h by itself. So we're going to say h equals 8 centimeters. Move to the back. It says a sphere has a radius of 8 centimeters. What is its volume in terms of pi? Alright, so for number 5, we're going to be finding the volume of this sphere, so we can draw it out like this. So I'm going to do in red this time. So I'll draw that circle. Now we can have that oval cut in the middle, have the dashed line to give it some depth. I'm going to say R equals 8 for this one. So we're talking about from that point to the edge, R equals 8. And so that volume formula for the sphere is V equals, let's label it sphere. I'm going to say V equals 4 times pi times the radius to the third power this time, divided by 3. So make sure you've seen how that formula works. And so what we can do is plug in our values. So I'm going to say volume equals 4 times pi times 8 to the third power divided by 3, which when I simplify, that's 4 times pi times 512 divided by 3, which is equal to 2048 times pi over 3. I'm going to say still centimeters cubed. So just make sure that you're using Desmos to be able to find those values. And now for number 6, it says this. It says a sphere has a volume of 36 pi centimeters cubed, and we're finding what the radius is. So what I can do is I'm going to draw that picture first. Even though we don't know what the radius is, we can still use the volume to be able to figure it out. So we're going to say r equals question mark. Let's do that a little bit better. Okay, so still have your formula first. So we're going to say the volume of this sphere is equal to 4 times pi times radius cubed over 3. So plug in what we have. We don't know what r is, but we can say this. We can say we have 36 pi equals 4 pi r cubed over 3. So even though we don't have radius, we can still solve for it. Because what we have to do is we have to multiply by the reciprocal to get rid of this fraction. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to multiply by 3 over 4 to both sides. Multiply by 3 over 4 to both sides to get rid of this fraction. And also too, I can divide both sides by pi to be able to cancel those out. So when I multiply by 3 over 4, this fraction cancels out, and this is like it's multiplying by 0.75. So this is going to be 27 equals, all right, let me write that in white here. When I say I have 27 equals r to the third power. Make sure you're using the cube root. So it looks like this. I'm going to take the cube root of both sides because I can't take the square root because it will not get rid of it. So I have to take the cube root. Again, this is the cube root because it's since we're taking to the third power. So that just means 3 times 3 times 3 is equal to 27. So I'm going to say for this one, r equals 3 centimeters for that radius. Alrighty, now for number 7, 8, and 9, it says using 3.14 as an approximation for pi, what is the volume for number 1? So what you're going to do is going to go back to the front side and find the volume for each of these. So it's going to be real easy because all I have to do is you have to say, well, if my volume was equal to 100 pi, that's the same thing as 100 times 3.14. So I'm going to say my volume for this one is going to be 314 centimeters cubed. Then for number 8, I said my volume was 98 pi, so I'm going to say my volume is going to be equal to 98 times 3.14. So when I multiply that out, I'll get my new answer of 307.72 centimeters cubed. So that even though we're multiplying by pi, notice how our units stay the same, and we end up with a decimal value. And then for number 9, trying to find that volume from number 5. So we're going to use, when I say volume equals 2048 times pi, so 2048 times 3.14, 4 divided by 3. So that's going to be the same as, if you type that all in, you should be able to get this repeating decimal. So I have 2,143.573 with 3 repeating centimeters cubed. So again, just make sure that you're typing it in carefully when you get it calculated. And lastly, for number 10, it says a cylinder has a volume of 78 centimeters cubed. And it says, what is the volume of a cone with the same height and the same radius? Well, if you remember from what we had before, we can say a cone is 1/3 of the volume of a cylinder with the same height and radius. So because they are the same, I can take that volume divided by 3. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say, well, I have volume of the cone is going to be equal to 78 divided by 3, which is the same as 26 centimeters cubed. So just be able to save some time, be able to calculate that for yourself by dividing by 3. Be sure to ask questions, and as always, super slam that subscribe button.